Welcome to the 4th grade for the 6 weeks curriculum preview. Let's take a look at what we've got going. Your independent reading level, I hope you have your unit overview with you looking on. The satisfactory level we want to get to is an S. Strong would be a T. One of the things we might want to really make sure is we're getting that independent reading time in. We want to compare literary and informal texts with similar ideas and provide textual evidence for both texts, including thematic units, links between the texts, comparing the author's treatment of the topic, and then we want them reading independently with comprehension and fluency. Just want you to remember there's just no substitute for eyes-on text reading. To become better readers, students must read a lot of independent reading time, have a lot of time. Each student needs a collection of just right books to practice. If you want a student's reading level to grow, they must be reading 60 minutes a day. That means that they need to be reading independently and just right books and with you, and then with read alouds and things like that. But I want to ask the question and ask yourself the question, who's doing the reading? Students need to be doing the reading. So let's get them ready. Alright, so the other expectations are that they would complete 1 to 3 weekly reading responses. I'll tell you that I really think 3 is a better way to do that. We have the rubric for literary response that students can do to actually get a grade for the responses that they're doing. You have your tic-tac-toe that we introduced to you this summer that you'll find in the Norma Jackson resources that will give you some ideas about what kind of reading responses. But your reading responses should really be a branch of what your lesson was for that day. So sometimes the tic-tac-toe fits, sometimes they don't. The other thing we want kids doing is setting goals and reflecting as readers. We have a rubric for independent reading. We have all these things in English and in Spanish. And then maybe in the data folder doing a PDSA on how am I growing as a reader. For their level S, here's some guided reading indicators. Remember, the continuum is just such a good tool for you. The level S is on page 302 and 305 in the old book, and planning for word work is on page 304. But I love how it just tells us what some characteristics of those type of children are. It also gives us the 3 types of thinking questions that and behaviors to notice in each level. Word study is we are going to be looking at other ways to spell the SH sound, and then silent letters, and then of course they're expected to spell concept sight words and homophones. And then your vocabulary is roots and affixes, and then being able to identify vocabulary, and then completing analogies using knowledge of antonyms and synonyms is your word work. So let's take a look at word work with your English word study. Week 25 and 26 is sight word with silent letters. You have silent sight words, and then you have some that are, you have another list that you're really having kids really understand that they need to know those words, just create them and have them in their memory. Week 27, 28, final stable syllable, the shun sound, looking at the most common syllable types. Week 29 and 30, the suffix shun, and looking at and studying when you add the suffix, what it does to the word and the meaning that it changes. And so your English word study will really help you with that. Your academic vocabulary for Unit 5 is very important because they're going to see a lot of these words on STAR, and it's just good for them to know, and because it just helps them to have the understanding of what they know. So that's your academic vocabulary. So let's look at word work. You want to continue building your reading and your vocabulary and recording the learning, like using the reader's notebook, identifying those vocabulary words, using different ways to do that. And of course, actually you're going to be changing, and your grammar is going to go to your writing workshop. But just want to tell you that the readers and the writer's notebooks are there for tools for them. So let's take a look at reading. The lead standard is Figure 19F, making connections between literary and informational text with similar ideas and providing textual evidence. That is your lead standard. Your processes, of course, is independent reading, and then media literacy is looking at compare various writing conventions used for digital media. I would say to use your clarifiers to get some ideas for that one. Here are your genres. You want to be doing theme and genre. You're going to compare and contrast the adventures of characters like tricksters in traditional and classical literature. You're going to be looking at drama, and like they're expected to compare the treatment of a similar theme in a play or script to a literary text. And then they are expected to identify similarities and differences between events and characters' experiences in fictional work and the actual events and experiences described in an author's biography or autobiography. So bringing that social studies in. And then we're going to be looking at procedural texts. They are expected to determine the sequence of activities needed to carry out a procedure. So let's take a look at maybe what some of the focus lessons, when you're looking at Figure 19, making connections, you have such a great resource. I know you've just been trained with Reading A to Z, but when you open up Reading A to Z and you actually go in and search paired books, you can get Show Me Only, and you can look at grade all the way. You could do grade 3. If you're looking right here, it says grade, that level S is here in grade 3, so you might want to look in grade 3. It's giving you some great fiction and nonfiction books to use. So with that, I went out and looked for you. I did it for 4.78, identifying similarities and differences with the events and characters' experiences. So in Reading A to Z, in the paired books, you will find a lesson plan so that you might want to do a focus lesson on this, like a whole week of using these great books, with using Ghost in the House, and then looking about Harriet Tubman. And then there's a graphic novel that is also tied to these. So, really practicing what our Figure 19 is asking us to do. So those are some great resources for you. One of the things about they're expected to compare and contrast the adventures of characters in traditional and classical literature with tricksters. One of my favorites is Piggy Pie. If you've not ever read that book, kids in the 4th grade would love Piggy Pie. You might compare that to The Widow's Broom. Then when you're looking at books like that, I looked in Reading A to Z, and I love How Little John Joined Robin Hood, and this is a multi-level book, so if you have kids that are upper level, they have the same story but in different levels. So in the independent reading, if you were doing this, students would read and compare the characters in their reading to the character in their books, and so that would be something that you would do. Drama, I looked in Reading A to Z for you. You do have in Treasures Renita the Frog Prince. That is in Unit 3. Then you could compare that to The Frog Prince, because that is a play, and then look at The Frog Prince and see what the similar theme is, and ask those type of things. Also, in your Reading A to Z, you have Readers Theaters that really do at the different levels that would really help kids to be able to do that. Informational text and procedural text, I went straight to Brenda S., and we looked at what was in the 4-6 weeks for science, and you are learning all about the seeds and growing seeds, and this is a STEM scope lesson. I will attach it with this PowerPoint so you can get kids really understanding procedural text, and so STEM scopes is just a great way to do that and using your science. It'd be great. It's getting that time, and so you need to look at the genres that are assessed on STAR and really take a look at your kids after maybe I know that you're out there probably doing a mock STAR. So looking at that data, seeing where those holes are, and really maybe doing some grouping, like strategy grouping in guided reading, to really help the kids that really are low on some of the skills. So once again, practicing how you actually do, like what you would do on the test, a modified close reading. You students would read the entire passage, then they read the passage a second time. During the reading, students annotate and do a summary of each of the paragraphs. Then the students will identify, why did the writer write this? What was the purpose of this? And take a look at the subheadings and consider why, what information was underneath that, and noting that what's the purpose of each section. That's usually huge on STAR. And then actually practicing reading and answering questions based on that text evidence. Really having them do a close read with that And then once again, using a close read with poetry, refer to your close reading tips that's in your Norma Jackson resources, and use that Friday anthology of poetry to really do some great close readings or read alouds with poetry and really analyzing. That'd be great. When you get into guided reading, this is a time where you really are wanting to meet with each low group and really hone in on meet with them every day, and then use your lesson plan template to really work with kids. You need to make sure that you are using every kid should be on RAS Kids their own pathway, just really reading books and having tests, and then making sure that you're going back in looking at what they're doing there. Reading A to Z can't tell you enough how when you can search by the standards. So if you've done a mock test and you see this, go in, look through the standards and get some books that will really help them, and maybe even group your kids this time on strategy grouping, but also using this amazing guided reading level library that will really help you. So let's take a look at writing. The students are, their lead standard is they're writing about their expected to write important personal experiences. They're expected to use details and word choice to convey the writer's unique perspective on the topic, including a personal narrative writing and writing to explain a personal opinion about a familiar topic. So we're taking a look. It's getting to be that time. You have about a month. But by the end of this 6 weeks, we still want them writing. They need to be writing every single day. They need to be having 3 drafts, greater than 3 drafts. And then you'll see at the end we want to have an imaginative text, and then maybe do some work with procedural text as well. But strong 9, I'm just going to tell you, we really need to get them right up here to really do well on STAR. But it's just about growing as the writer. In grammar, we're taking a look at irregular verbs and adjectives, following your grammar alert and your word study. The writing process, we want them to plan quickly, and then we want them to maintain a logical, well-controlled progression of ideas that enhances that central message all the way through. We want them to improve fluency by varying those sentence structures, really understanding the structure of sentences, and then make sure that they are proofreading for accuracy of those words that we know, and capitalization rules. Okay, so once again, the specific genres are writing literary text, writing procedural text, and then you've seen your conventions that you have. We have a month. I'll have a month. So really analyze what you have done on STAR. Discuss what to expect on STAR. You know what you're doing on that. As we have gone through all of the support meetings, remember test taker turned test maker is the best way for us to practice those multiple choice, practicing just being the test maker themselves. Power planning, so important right now. If you have not seen this, I'll attach this. Power planning, if you don't know what that is, contact me or contact a fellow 4th grade writing teacher, because this is going to help them get busy on STAR. Paragraphs, we are just polishing up on students using those power paragraphs to make great paragraphs. Then after STAR, we want them to write, maybe model a personal narrative in several focused lessons and turn a personal narrative into an imaginative story. Let them have some really great fun with them. And then we also want at the end to write maybe some procedural text after looking at STEM scopes and reviewing what a good procedural text looks like. Have them choose a topic they wish to write about, and then write a procedural text, and then exchange papers and see if the students can follow that procedure. So I know it's getting down to that time, and I know you've done as much as you possibly can. You've done a great job. I just appreciate all your hard work. I always want to remind you to always use your digital learning specialist, because they can do some great things and do some of those reading responses that are really a lot of fun for kids. So good job, and thank you for all the work you